400,000 people face quarantine as another county in China goes under lockdown. Despite few reported virus cases, the county is adopting the same measures as epicenter Wuhan used when the virus first hit. A Chinese farmer suddenly loses the legitimacy of his land. The farmer and his family have been farming there for 4 generations in the past 60 years. Contradictory virus numbers are coming out of China's capital. That's as one hospital reports more virus cases than all of Beijing combined. Shares for one Chinese company listed in Nasdaq plunged over 20% after some of the gold it used to obtain loans turned out to be fake. And New York City opens up the first airport testing facility at its JFK location, but it won't test everyone. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now to Beijing. According to an internal document we obtained, the fever department of a Beijing hospital reported 26 confirmed virus cases on June 17th. But that same day, the entire city only reported 21 cases.
设有发热门诊的79家医疗机构。
In Beijing, there are close to 80 fever departments and hospitals or clinics where people can be tested for the virus. That means, based on the document, the confirmed cases found by all 80 of the facilities are reportedly less than those discovered by one single hospital. Now we look at one county around 100 miles from Beijing. Chinese health officials say they're shutting down the county and locking down its 400,000 residents. The county, named Anxing, will employ the same lockdown strategies as Wuhan when the virus first hit the city. According to the announcement, all communities in the county will be closed off and monitored. No outside vehicles or residents will be allowed to enter, and only one person in each household will be permitted to leave the house to buy food or medicine. As of last week, only 12 cases have been officially reported in the county since the pandemic began. 11 of them have been linked to the Xinfadi market in Beijing, where the newest virus cluster originated. The report also claims that there are no current second-generation cases of the mutated virus in the county and that the pandemic has been basically under control. Just 2 days before the lockdown, officials reported 0 new cases across the entire province. Up until the closure of Anxing County last weekend, China's pandemic situation went from basically under control to quickly evolving into full lockdown. This unusual development raises question as to whether the pandemic has undergone significant changes in China. Over the weekend, we reported that the city of Yichang, about 25 miles from the famous Three Gorges Dam, was drenched with floodwater. Amid the dam's fast rising water level, speculation was rising among locals that the dam was leaking water downstream. Based on an internal document we obtained, the authorities ordered workers at the Three Gorges Dam to release water downstream on Sunday evening. It's unclear if there are documents ordering similar water releases from before that time. All 5 of Hubei province's largest lakes have exceeded floodwater warning levels. Wuhan remains soaked by the heavy rains and flooding. More and more unusual weather conditions seem to be appearing in China. Over the weekend in Hubei province, a sudden tornado appeared. Video shows something catching fire in the distance. Flames quickly flare up while debris is sent flying. People can also be heard shouting. It follows another tornado last week in Beijing. The column of black debris-filled air was captured on video rotating violently over a building. One man is heard in the video calling it very scary. And 2 weeks ago, yet another tornado surprised locals in Beijing. The tornado was seen hurling a mobile house through the air, which was destroyed. Debris from the wreck soared into the sky. The situation between the U.S. and the Chinese regime is still tense. Now, the Wall Street Journal reports that Beijing quietly warned the Trump administration not to cross a line on issues it considers off-limit. Beijing warned there would be retaliation, particularly in regards to the Phase 1 trade deal. Such off-limit topics include the national security law on Hong Kong, Taiwan, which the Chinese regime regards as part of China, and human rights issues regarding Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities. China's top diplomat stressed the two sides have to work together at a meeting with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo last week. He pointed out Beijing's strong dissatisfaction with Washington's bill on Uyghur human rights. People familiar with the matter told the Wall Street Journal that meant Beijing was threatening not to hold up the trade deal if the U.S. crossed the line. Pompeo, meanwhile, pointed out the U.S. would not back down. Another area Beijing and Washington are clashing on involves visas. Beijing says it will impose visa restrictions on U.S. individuals with so-called egregious conduct on Hong Kong-related issues. This mirrors U.S. sanctions against unnamed Chinese officials deemed responsible for curbing freedoms in the city. This comes as China considers the national security law for Hong Kong, which many fear will strip the hub of its freedoms and give Beijing more control. The U.S. Senate recently approved a bill that would impose mandatory sanctions on people or companies that back efforts to restrict Hong Kong's autonomy. It includes secondary sanctions on banks that do business with anyone backing any crackdown on the territory's autonomy. China's foreign ministry spokesman warns Beijing has lodged a complaint with the U.S. over the bill and will respond with strong countermeasures. It's not just Washington Beijing has issues with. China's foreign ministry on Monday accused some Australian politicians of stigmatizing and demonizing bilateral relations. This after a New South Wales politician was probed by authorities in a China-focused investigation linked to foreign interference. Early on Friday, federal police searched the New South Wales state politician's home and parliamentary office in an investigation Prime Minister Scott Morrison linked to foreign interference. China's foreign ministry spokesman declined to comment on the case directly, but accused certain Australian politicians of fabricating stories about Chinese espionage and infiltration. He claimed there was no evidence to support the claims. Beijing was angered in 2018 when Australia passed the foreign interference legislation, in part due to a classified Australian Security Intelligence Organization report on Chinese influence activity. China is becoming more and more of a concern for U.S. military commanders in Europe and Africa. Admiral James Foggo, head of the U.S. Navy in Europe and Africa, says China's One Belt, One Road initiative is able to subvert international rules-based architecture in Africa and Europe, a system that has maintained peace in those regions since the end of World War II. The Chinese Communist Party offers financial relief for nations who wish to build or reinforce infrastructure, especially Africa. But when the countries become unable to pay back the debts, China uses the position of power to influence the governments and their infrastructure. The influence can then be used to restrict access to key seaports and airport facilities for other nations. That means they effectively fall under Chinese control. And the U.S. presses Europe to uproot a Chinese security screening company. A campaign led by the National Security Council and other U.S. agencies is trying to rally European governments to cut ties with Nasdaq company, a well-connected Chinese state-controlled company. The company manufactures screening systems for cargo, luggage, and passengers, which are becoming a fixture at ports, border crossings, and airports across Europe. Its systems are linked up to databases with shipping manifests and passenger information, including passports, fingerprints, and other details. U.S. officials worry that this data might end up in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. More and more countries in Europe are making the choice to exclude Chinese telecom giant Huawei from their 5G network infrastructure. But Sweden has chosen to stick with the controversial tech company. 2 out of Sweden's 3 major telecom companies include Huawei as a supplier for their 5G network, and one of them is closely tied to the Chinese company. Telecom company Tre Sweden, or Three Sweden, is part of Hong Kong conglomerate CK Hutchison. The company's founder, Li Ka-shing, is the richest man in Hong Kong. Li is also known to have close ties with high-level officials from the Chinese Communist Party. Li's son also owns one of the largest telecoms companies in Hong Kong, known as PCCW HKT. It's another close partner to Huawei. Washington says Huawei is a Trojan horse for Chinese intelligence. The White House has been actively lobbying allies to not use the company's 5G technology, citing risks to national security. In China, anger spreads over government land grabs. According to the Chinese official report, of the more than 100,000 petitions in China, 2/3 of them were over land disputes. A Chinese farmer in Hainan province tells us his bitter story.
We've been cultivating our land generation after generation. Now you are going to destroy it, asking me for land certificates. Is this reasonable? A local government in China suddenly lays claim to land where a Chinese farmer has been farming for 4 generations over the past 60 years. The local officials in Hainan province asked a local farmer for land titles. The farmer claimed that after decades of farming the land, the Chinese Communist Party, also called the CCP, has never issued them land titles. Now they ask me for land certificates. During the 1950s, was there a land certificate then? Do farmers have land titles? Only the landlords have a title deed for land. We poor farmers at that time did not have it. In the past, the southernmost island province of Hainan was a wild and lonely place. It evolved as migrants from the mainland arrived beginning in the 1950s, contributing to the island's agriculture and economy. The farmers' ancestors were among them. They came to the island upon the CCP's call to develop Hainan and began their 60 years of farming. Without land titles, the Hainan government immediately prohibits the farmer from using his land. 3 days later, the local government sends people to cut down the farmer's crops. In desperation, the farmer made a video in hopes that it would attract public attention. I have heard of illegal occupation, illegal construction, and illegal search and seizure, but I have never heard of illegal farming. Farming becomes a criminal act, is that right? However, the land policy under the Communist Party in China is the root cause of the lack of land ownership among Chinese people. According to property law in China, the state owns all urban land, and the rural land is collectively owned. In other words, all land in China is owned by the CCP. People who purchase land under the scheme have land use rights for a maximum of 70 years for residential use, and it starts right after the developer gets the land from the market. For rural land, farmers only have the right to use it for a set number of years, depending on the purpose.
A U.S.-listed Chinese company is under investigation for using fake gold as collateral to borrow loans.
A Chinese company listed in Nasdaq is being investigated as some of the 83 tons of gold bars it used as loan collateral turned out to be fake. Now creditors are left holding the bag for over $2 billion in loans. According to the Chinese media Caixin, the Wuhan-based King Gold is one of China's largest private gold processors, making and trading gold jewelry. It obtained loans worth $2.8 billion, or 20 billion yuan, since 2013 from several Chinese financial institutions using 83 tons of supposedly pure gold as guarantee. But at least some of the gold bars turned out to be gilded copper. When one of the creditors tried to sell the gold to cover its own debts, it found out the gold was fake. Shocked by the news, other creditors also tested the gold, which also turned out to be fake. It's unclear whether the gold bars were fake from the beginning or later replaced. Authorities are investigating. The company's chairman, a former Chinese military man, denied any wrongdoing. The loans are covered by several insurers, the largest being the state-owned People's Insurance Company of China, or PICC. The Caixin article says insurers' backing was the key that King Gold was able to get the loans. PICC is facing multiple lawsuits, but a spokesperson told Caixin that the policies only cover losses caused by accidents, disasters, robbery, and theft.
King Gold's share on Nasdaq tumbled over 20% on Monday. And New York City has officially opened a virus testing facility at its JFK airport. It's the very first airport testing facility in the U.S., but is currently limited testing airplane employees.
Here at JFK Airport in New York City, vital diagnostic testing provider ExpressCheck revealed a brand new virus testing facility. It's the first airport test facility in the country. Built inside a terminal, the facility's location means convenience for employees and passengers. The facility has 13 exam rooms and is capable of testing 500 people a day, 7 days a week.
Here, a patient can get 2 types of tests done. The nasal PCR swab, which is the gold standard in COVID testing. And we also offer the full blood antibody testing as well, where there'll be an arm draw. And all of our tests are sent to outside labs for processing.
When it reached the U.S., the virus hit the tri-state area, including New York City, the hardest. Satzman intends to expand the country's airport testing sites to the rest of the country.
We will be expanding this to other airports in the country, but we wanted to start to ensure that we have a good pilot set up that's being done safely, securely, and now with our opening, we'll plan our expansion.
Over the weekend, New York reported its lowest single-day death toll since March 15th, but over 40,000 new virus cases were reported across the nation on Sunday. Marcelo Venegas, a physician coordinating with ExpressCheck, says the new testing facility is crucial for preventing another virus outbreak.
It's really safety, not just for the employee and the staff around them, but also for their families, because if they're positive from the high exposure that they have to passengers coming in, not from just other places in the country which are having higher rates, but also in the world.
The testing facility is only testing airline and airport employees for now, but plans to test travelers later on. Patients who were tested can find their results online after 2 to 3 days.
More Florida beaches close after a rise in CCP virus cases. The state says interactions among young people caused the spike. Reports indicate 8,500 new cases.
Officials announced more Florida beach closures as virus cases spike in the state. 8,500 new cases and almost 30 new deaths were reported on Sunday. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says that interactions among young people are driving the surge.
I knew I wasn't going to go hang out with a bunch of people before I came here because God forbid I did get it, and then I get here and then I give it to my grandparents who live in this little community, and they see their friends, and then it gets passed around, and then I know I'd be the reason for it.
County officials in Broward and Palm Beach counties have followed the lead of neighboring Miami-Dade County in closing beaches ahead of the 4th of July weekend.
I think that's a good idea because it is the 4th of July weekend, and that's when lots of barbecues and, lots of things happen.
In total, the state now has over 140,000 confirmed cases and more than 3,400 deaths. DeSantis says the nationwide George Floyd protest took attention away from the virus pandemic, leading people to pay less attention to safety measures.
One of the first widely used drugs to treat the CCP virus just announced its price. It sets a precedent for pricing on future virus treatments.
Gilead Sciences says it will charge the U.S. government $390 per vial for its virus drug, remdesivir. That's over $2,300 for a typical 5-day treatment. The company says it will offer this one-price model to developed countries so it doesn't get slowed down in negotiations. Once the supply is opened up, the company will increase the list price for private insurance companies and other commercial payers. They will charge $520 per vial in the U.S. That's over $3,000 for a 5-day course. Remdesivir is one of the first drugs available to fight the virus. U.S. regulators authorized it in May after a trial found it sped recovery by about 4 days. The price decision is important because it sets the precedent for how much future COVID medicines might cost.
The world has now surpassed 2 sobering virus milestones. At least 500,000 confirmed deaths and 10 million confirmed cases. Of course, this does not account for the unknown toll of the virus in countries with typically opaque regimes like China, Iran, and North Korea. So it's likely already much higher.
Global cases of coronavirus exceeded 10 million on Sunday, according to a Reuters tally, as the number of deaths from the respiratory illness approached 500,000. The grim milestone comes as many hard-hit countries ease their lockdown measures, while making extensive alterations to the ways people live and work. North America, Latin America and Europe each account for around 25% of cases, while Asia and the Middle East have around 11% and 9% respectively. That's according to a Reuters tally which uses government reports. Just 2 countries account for over a third of all new cases over the past week, India and Brazil. They're both battling outbreaks of over 10,000 cases a day, and Brazil reported a record 54,700 new cases on June the 19th. Some researchers say the death toll in Latin America could rise over 380,000 by October. As of Sunday morning, there had been more than 497,000 fatalities linked to COVID-19 worldwide. Some countries are also experiencing a resurgence in infections, leading authorities to partially reinstate lockdown measures in what experts say could be a recurring pattern in the coming months and into 2021.
In Paris, a wax statue museum has reopened. There, you can meet in person with Donald Trump, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Einstein. Our France correspondent David Vives has the story.
One last brush over the hair, a little spray fixer, and this Donald Trump statue is ready to see the public. This is Museum Grevon. It displays more than 200 wax statues. Some of them mark history, and some are players in the modern world. The museum is reopening after 3 months closure due to lockdown. Statues are tended to each morning. Today it's Scarlett Johansson and Cara Delevingne's turn.
We need to permanently restore the statues. Visitors sometimes touch or even bump into them. One ear is broken. Sometimes the statue gets old with time. After the death of a royal, it was common to have a wax model of their face put on display. That was up until the 17th century.
The Grevon Museum was created at the end of the 19th century. According to the museum's director, the museum was a media by itself at that time.
The photography was not yet fully developed, not even mentioning the cinema. So we produced wax statues of famous people making the news, and the public came here to see by themselves.
He says crime scenes made the news at that time and piqued people's curiosity. Then another trend developed, the selfie.
People then came here to take a photo of themselves with celebrities, and as you can imagine, this trend is still going on today.
It takes 6 months to create one statue. After the museum artists mold all the details based on the original model, the celebrity, which includes hands and sometimes even teeth.
Working on wax statues requires specific skills. We're in between artists and craftsmen.
The museum also produces light and sound shows, all that is required to give the public a glimpse of magic and poetry. Reporting by David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest updates, and see you tomorrow.